ACB raised the concerns. You advisory for consideration because these issues were outside our mandate, 1. 2, they were not conclusive evidence of corruption, not a conclusive evidence of corruption. The fact that there are viability concerns, that is not a conclusive evidence of corruption. The fact that the price had increased, that is not a conclusive evidence of corruption. What would be evidence of corruption? Honorable members, you will take note that even now, as we speak, we don't have a forensic or scientific report that has found that to buy the hotel at 128 billion in 2025 was wrong, was entirely wrong. We don't have a conclusive scientific report that has said, by all means, this business was not viable. Now, if I had a conclusive report that by all means, this business is not viable from an investment point of view, that's where my work starts. To say, we have a report conclusive, whether from the regulator or from whoever, a conclusive authority. We have a report from a conclusive authority that says this business is not viable by all means. Then the question would be, what would motivate you to proceed with a transaction on a viable business? That's where ACB's work starts. If I had a conclusive report to say there is no way from an investment, from an economic, from a prudential point of view, you could buy a hotel of the stature of AMARYLLIS at 128 billion in 2025 November. Then that's where my work would start to say, in view of this authoritative finding, what motivated you to proceed with the transaction? Then we start looking at the elements of misuse of office or elements of exchange of bribes and so on. So to suggest that as SCB, I would say, because there are concerns of viability, it means there is corruption. That is very wrong. What if the fund, what if evidence proves that the business was viable? I'll have eggs thrown on me in court. What if authoritative evidence or authoritative reports, forensic reports or investment reports show that 128 billion was okay for AMARYLLIS in 2025? What would I do in court? So it's not as easy as one plus one is 2. That's not how we conclude. That's not how we make investigations. As SCB, we don't have mandate, we don't have powers to decide on investment and prudential decisions. That is why we could not say, because we have found this is corruption. No. That's why we referred these issues to the right parties to look at them, then give us feedback to say we have looked at them, we are going to rectify them in this manner. So that is what we did as ACB. Now, honorable members, allow me to deal with the issue of restriction notice, because that's another issue that I was asked to look at. I was asked to look at the factual, or to explain to you the factual and the legal basis upon which we issued the restriction notice and upon which we subsequently lifted the restriction notice. This is particularly important because there is a misunderstanding of the role of a restriction notice. Honorable members, as I said, when we commenced investigations, we issued a restriction notice against the sale until we concluded the investigations. Now, a restriction notice is like an injunction. I know you are well familiar of an injunction. When you are going to court to say we want the court to determine a substantive dispute, you are allowed to obtain an injunction to stop the transaction until the substantive dispute is concluded. If the substantive dispute is in your favor, the court maintains the injunction as a mandatory injunction. If the substantive dispute is not in your favor, the court lifts the injunction. The court cannot say the substantive dispute is not in your favor, but we are going to maintain the injunction. It doesn't work like that. Now, restriction notices are provided for under Section 23(1) of the Corrupt Practices Act. Let me read out, if I may be allowed. It says, where the Bureau has instituted an investigation or prosecution in respect of an offense under this Act, the Director may, by written notice to any person, direct that such person shall not, without the written consent of the Director, dispose of or otherwise deal with any property or proceed with any contract, transaction, or agreement, or any other arrangement which is the subject of investigations or prosecutions. Further, under Section 23, subsection 3, a restriction notice issued under subsection 1 shall have effect from the time of service and shall continue to be in force for a period of 3 months or until cancelled by the Director or whichever is earlier, but may be renewed upon expiry of 3 months. Now, honorable members, it is important, and I will request you to understand the law regulating restriction notices. In summary, the law under Section 23 of the Corrupt Practices Act is as follows. A restriction notice can only be issued if the SCB has instituted an investigation or prosecution of a matter. That's why in this case, when we instituted investigations, we issued a restriction notice. This means once the Bureau has concluded an investigation and there is no evidence to proceed with the prosecution of the matter, the restriction notice can no longer be sustained. 2, a restriction notice is not absolute. In other words, a restriction notice is not an end in itself. It is just a tool. Its lifespan is only 3 months. This means a restriction notice can expire after 3 months, firstly. Secondly, the court can even, on application by the other party, refuse to renew a restriction notice. So it means a restriction notice can expire after 3 months. After 3 months, I have to go back to court and say, I issued a restriction notice. Can you renew the restriction notice? The court can refuse. The restriction notice will fall off. Or the other party can go to court and apply to remove the restriction notice. The court can remove the restriction notice. What this means is that a restriction notice on its own, as I said, is not an end. It can be removed anytime. Anytime. That's why I fast-tracked the investigations to finish the investigations within a month, because I was avoiding a situation where I am still doing investigations for 3 months, and I would have to go to court to renew the restriction notice. So, what are the issues here? First, factual and legal basis upon which the restriction was So I have indicated the factual basis upon which we issued the restriction is because we were doing investigations. Factual and legal basis upon which the restriction notice was lifted. So, as already submitted, once investigations are concluded and there is no evidence to proceed with the prosecution of the matter, the restriction notice can no longer be sustained. Because if you remember, the law says where the Bureau has instituted an investigation or prosecution in respect of an offense under this Act, the Director may, by written notice, issue a restriction notice, which means the lifespan of a restriction notice is during investigations. So if after investigations you haven't found evidence, you have closed the file, automatically you can't maintain the restriction notice, you lift it. Just as the court would lift an injunction if the claimant has not made out his case. If after investigation you have found a case to prosecute, you maintain the restriction notice until prosecution. In this case, we lifted the restriction notice because we had concluded the investigations and we did not find evidence to sustain a prosecution. Now, it should be noted that ACB was in this circumstance obligated to lift the restriction notice after the conclusion of the investigations in accordance with the law. The lifting, and allow me, honorable members, if I may emphasize, the lifting of the restriction notice did not signify an approval for the fund to proceed with the transaction. The lifting of the restriction notice did not signify an approval of the fund to proceed with the transaction. Why? As already submitted, a restriction notice is neither absolute or an end in itself. It can be lifted, it can be vacated at any time, depending on circumstances. Therefore, in reviewing a matter, it is important to look at the duties and responsibilities of the concerned party beyond the restriction notice. In the present case, as I have said, the restriction notice could not be sustained at law after concluding the investigations. And it did not mean the lifting of the restriction notice was an approval for the fund to proceed. The fund was at all material times aware of the concerns that the Bureau had raised in respect of the proposed hotel purchase. These concerns related to the fund's fiduciary, investment, and prudential responsibilities. And they were not only brought to the attention of the Attorney General, they were also brought to the fund in the letter lifting the restriction notice on 3rd January 2026. So, beyond lifting the restriction notice, the fund still had a responsibility to comply with the fiduciary, investment, and prudential responsibilities in the proposed purchase of the hotel. Now, another thing, if we go back to the section on section 23, it says, where the Bureau has instituted an investigation or prosecution in respect of an offense under this matter, the Director may, by written notice, direct any person that such person shall not, without the written notice or consent of the Director, proceed with the transaction. What this means is, if the Bureau wants to give a party an authority to proceed with the transaction, it issues a written notice, specifically saying you can proceed with the transaction. At ACB, where the Bureau has concluded investigations and is convinced that a transaction is in order, in line with section 23, the Director issues a consent to deal, authorizing the transaction or contract. So we specifically issue a consent to deal, to authorize the transaction. In the present case, I have said that we shouldn't confuse. The restriction notice was lifted because we had concluded investigations. The lifting was not an approval to proceed with the transaction. In the present case, the restriction notice, notwithstanding the lifting of the restriction notice due to lack of evidence, the Bureau did not issue a specific written consent authorizing the fund to proceed with the transaction as is required under Section 23. This is because the fund had never reverted to the Bureau to appraise it if it had addressed the fiduciary, investment and prudential concerns which the Bureau had noted in its letters to the AG and to the fund itself when lifting the restriction notice. Therefore, the fact remains, from our perspective, beyond lifting the restriction notice, there is no specific consent to deal sanctioning the transaction by the SCB within the powers of under Section 23. So we were also asked to do an advisory. We were also asked to explain to you on an advisory recommendation we made to the appropriate authorities. I have already dealt with this issue, but also allow me to explain a bit about advisory recommendations. It doesn't mean that whenever the Bureau is conducting investigations, all the time we will find evidence of corruption or abuse of office. It doesn't mean so. Sometimes we cannot find evidence, but there are some other things which we would note that these things are wrong, but they are not within my mandate. What am I going to do? So we issue advisory recommendations to the relevant bodies. I can give an example. In the East Bridge case that I am investigating currently, the Bureau had issued an advisory recommendation to say, don't proceed with this transaction. Don't proceed with the barter kind of trade. That's the advisory recommendation that the Bureau had issued. In this case, we issued an advisory recommendation for the proper authorities to ensure that the issues we had raised, which were not within our mandate, had been addressed before concluding the transaction. Now, advisory recommendations are ignored. In the East Bridge case, government ignored SCB advisory recommendation not to do barter trade with East Bridge. In this case, I don't know.
Controlling officer, you are the acting SCB director and a lawyer. Is it prudent enough for us to get into East Bridge issue when the issue is in court and others have been arrested on the same? I would want to guide that as Parliament. Normally, we don't discuss issues which are in court. But since you're a lawyer, you may wish to guide. But where I stand, that is completely out of order. And I would like to request you that we restrict ourselves to this. If you want to give any other examples, kindly select those which are not currently in court. You may wish to proceed, Controlling Officer.
Thank you very much, Chair. In view of your intervention, let me withdraw from the record the example I was making.
Thank you so much, Controlling Officer.
Thank you.
May wish to proceed.
Yes, but the main point was that sometimes, or most of the times, the advisory recommendations that we issue to various entities are ignored. And now, when an entity ignores SCB's advisory recommendation, you don't go to SCB and say, can you explain why did that entity ignore your recommendation? It is for the entity to explain why it did not attend to the issues that SCB had raised. That's the issue we are talking about here. That is all on the issue of the advisory recommendations that we made. I'm going towards the end of my presentation because I'm remaining with two headings. The last part, one heading was the nature of any outstanding concerns identified during the investigation, including those relating to valuation, price escalation, and governance risks. So I will start with valuation and the price escalation. One, investigations revealed that the valuers came up with different values in the stake of AMARYLLIS Hotel. This is typical of valuation reports, as there are several factors that have to be considered, and also as there are various methods of valuation, which consequently produce results. As a bureau, we found that the difference between the initial amount of 47.8 billion in 2023 to 128 billion in 2025 is quite big. There is a need to investigate why there is such a huge difference. However, it has to be noted that the high price alone may not be evidence of corruption. Factors such as inflation and others must be considered. Two, governance risks. Investigations showed that there was a long period between the time the term of the old board expired and the time when the new board was constituted. It took more than a year for the new board of trustees to be constituted. This might have contributed to the principal officer's decisions. This might have contributed to the principal officer making decisions which were ordinarily supposed to be made by the board. Investigations so far show that there are no strict rules that may govern responsibilities of the people who make decisions on investment of the funds. It is recommended that if it is found that this was a wrong investment, apart from pursuing with the investigations, other sanctions may be considered. Three, whether the Bureau contemplates any further investigations. The Bureau does not work in isolation. Our investigations are backed by, among other things, forensic audit reports and other investigative reports from other stakeholders, including regulators. In our communication to the Attorney General on 18th December and to the fund on 3 January, we clearly indicated that we would reopen the investigations should new evidence arise pointing to criminality. The Bureau stands ready to reopen its investigations on the matter, depending on the outcome of several reports, including forensic audit reports and reports from the regulator or any other authority that is empowered to make a report, a conclusive authoritative report with respect to this transaction. D, whether the Bureau contemplates any further advisory action. Yes, the Bureau contemplates and suggests the following advisory actions. 1, there should be a comprehensive forensic audit report of the fund, covering a substantial period of time to determine whether there has been fraud, misconduct, or financial irregularities to support the SCB's investigations into whether there was corruption or abuse of office by the directors or employees of the fund. The Bureau suggests that for comprehensive management of the fund, the forensic audit should include the fund's or other investments, including the fund's purchase and viability of Sigerege Hotel, now Lifestyle Boutique Hotel. 2, we recommend that there should be a complete report from the Registrar of Financial Institutions in his capacity as a regulator of the fund. The report should outline the following. The report should outline whether, by proceeding to purchase the hotel in the circumstances it did, the fund violated its investment, prudential, and fiduciary responsibilities. Particularly, the report should, among other things, provide conclusive findings on A, whether it was wrong from an economic, investment, and prudential perspective for the fund to buy AMARYLLIS Hotel at a consideration of 128 billion in October-November 2025. 2, the report should bring conclusive findings on whether the investment into the hotel was not a viable investment from an economic, investment, and prudential and fiduciary perspectives. The findings of this regulator, among others, including the findings of this committee in this respect, are going to reveal motives, collusions, or undue influence on the fund, thereby supporting the Bureau's investigations into allegations of corruption and abuse of office. During and after the conclusion of the investigations, the SCB will suggest advisory actions to be implemented by various institutions such as the fund and the fund managers. Whether the Bureau contemplates any monitoring actions. Yes, the Bureau contemplates monitoring the recommendations that will come after the processes. Finally, conclusion. Honorable members, our investigations did not find enough evidence to support the allegations of corruption made. The evidence gathered did not meet the required standard of proving beyond a reasonable doubt that any advantage was offered, given, or received by any party. We also did not find evidence of payment of inducement or benefit to any public officer or anyone to influence the investment decision. In addition, there was no evidence to suggest that the pension fund managers were improperly influenced, acted under inducement, or failed to comply with their fiduciary obligations. Further, as of now, there is no evidence suggesting that the valuation reports were corruptly solicited. In corruption cases under the Corrupt Practices Act, the burden of proof rests on the Anti-Corruption Bureau. The Bureau must establish each and every element of the offense, including the existence of an advantage, corrupt intent, and connection between the advantage and the performance of public function. The standard of proof is beyond reasonable doubt. This requires strong and compelling evidence of the commission of the crime. Suspicion, conjecture, or a mere possibility of wrongdoing is insufficient to meet this standard. Applying this standard to the present matter, the available evidence was not sufficient to sustain a criminal prosecution. It should be pointed out that the Bureau raised the concerns and identified the risks, the potential areas of risks, which were duly submitted to the relevant authorities. Subject to the production of various reports recommended by the Bureau above, we stand ready to reopen the investigations with a view to establishing, if possible, the elements that can prove crime under the Corrupt Practices Act. Honorable Chair, honorable members, that is the end of our presentation this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Controlling Officer, for your submission. Honorable members, Having listened to the controlling officer, do you have any takers on what the controlling officer has submitted? I see Chitipa Central. You may take the floor. Chitipa Central.
Thank you, Chair. According to the controlling officer, as of 18th December, they had limited information. Hence the conclusion that there was no sufficient evidence to think there was corruption. With the new developments, what's the Bureau's position? Do they think now there's sufficient evidence to think there was corrupt practice? Secondly, Chair, the whistleblower was afraid to trust the Bureau with his or her information. The same was with AMARYLLIS Society. I'm asking the Bureau if they are not worried that the society are not willing to trust them with their information. Thank you, Chair.
Controlling officer, can you take that from Chitipa Central? Controlling officer. Kindly switch on your mic, controlling officer.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you very much, Honorable Member from Chitipa Central. Your first question was, what is the Bureau's position now? Do we think there is sufficient information to find evidence of corruption? So far, through these proceedings, we are able to get some information that we can use to find evidence of corruption. I'm not going to specifically state what kind of evidence to avoid prejudicing the people who may be the subject of the investigations. But as I said, Honorable Member, the investigations of the Bureau do not just start from abstract. That is why we had difficulties in these investigations because of those limitations. The limitations of lack of information from the whistleblower. Now, information is coming out through these proceedings. And from our recommendations, we have also recommended that there should be a conclusive investigation or a conclusive report from an authoritative entity that would say, from an investment point of view, from a prudential point of view, from a fiduciary point of view, the fund was wrong to proceed to conclude with this transaction. If we have that conclusive evidence, that conclusive report, that will be our starting point. Because from then is when we will start analyzing the motives of the people who were concerned in the transaction. The second question was, Honorable Member, whether we are not worried that the AMARYLLIS Society and the anonymous complainant do not trust us. Actually, at this point in time, probably this is the time that the Bureau has received a lot of complaints. Actually, we are grappling, we are receiving a lot of complaints on corruption issues right now. So we are not worried because one or two entities chose not to trust the Bureau. Thank you very much.
Controlling officer, another question. Can you come with supplementary Chitipa Central?
I don't think my first question has been answered, Chair. In fact, I've been more confused. The question is, by 16th December, they did not have enough information. Now they have some information. Are they going to proceed with investigation or not? I believe investigation is looking for the clues to get the evidence. The answer is like, we don't have the evidence. I would want to bring to the controlling officer attention that now they know that AMJ, the organization which was the basis of the increased price, is not licensed to practice. Again, one of the complaints was conflict of interest from the AMARYLLIS Society, that CAM is conflicted. We know that CAM did their work for free. There was a motive for CAM to do that work for free. I don't know what type of evidence they are looking for after hearing these 2 points have just indicated. My question, I think, is something like, we have seen there is some gaps that need to be investigated, or up to date, we are not seeing any gaps that need to be investigated. Thank you, Chair.
Controlling officer, you may take that one. Maybe before, you can take with Chikwawa West. Chikwawa West.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you very much, Acting ACB Director, for the presentation, a comprehensive one. Through your presentation and through your investigations, it shows that you dwelled much on the submission from Malawi Law Society to do your investigation. I just want to find out, why didn't you maybe extend it to doing the investigation according to your mandate that you have, that you can do investigations even not only because you have been there's a complaint, but maybe also going into other details. Thank you very much, Honorable Chair.
Controlling officer, there are 2 questions, one from Chitipa Central, the other one from Chikwawa West. Controlling officer, you have repeatedly said that valuations said the business was viable, according to valuations. But when you read the valuations, even at face value, you find that 1 or 2 were under 40 billion. Just another one from Nico Asset Managers was somewhere around 47 billion. Now, from nowhere, you find that that hotel has been purchased at 128 billion. Was that not a red flag for you that something is not right? Because all those valuations were under 50 billion, but from nowhere, it had to hit 128 billion. Like what Chitipa Central has indicated, and the person who actually confirmed that they are not licensed, was sitting, that team of 2 was seated where you are sitting with your controlling officer. Controlling officer, can you come out very clear in terms of the red flag, which was obvious? You are an intellectual. You should know these numbers at ease. Kindly come out clearly so that we can get comfort in your office. Controlling officer, over to you.
Thank you very much, Chair. Let me start by the question from Honorable Member for Chitipa Central. I did indicate initially from our letters to the Attorney General and even to the fund, we clearly came out that we were going to reopen the investigations should new evidence arise pointing to criminality. And I didn't want to specifically say that we are going to, so far, we have noted gaps in this, and we are going to investigate this entity, that entity, because probably I thought that might have been, that might not have been right to do so. So, unless I am guided, but the investigations have shown the issues that we need for now to investigate based on the people that have already appeared before this committee. So we are going to do investigations because there are issues that we did not know. That was a limitation that I had also talked about. We are getting to know them now. But whether I stand to be guided, whether I must say that we are going to investigate this and that, this one and that, maybe I stand to be guided by the chair.
It's fine. That you can paint. Can you go on and retake the other one?
Thank you. Honorable Member for Chikwawa West, for your question. The response to that question will be taken by my colleague here, Mr. Isaac Nkoma, who was the lead investigator in the matter. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chair. If I got the question correctly from Chikwawa West, the question was like, it appears the investigations of the Anti-Corruption Bureau concentrated on only on the allegations of the Malawi Law Society. Yes, we concentrated on the allegations that were raised in the press statement of the Malawi Law Society because of the seriousness of the allegations. We thought that if you could have a wider scope apart from those 4 allegations, then the investigations could be too wide and too long, and taking into account the public interest which was there. We thought that we should address the allegations at that particular time. But internally, we have also the Corruption Prevention Department, which is also looking at these systems that need to be reviewed to see the systems that are used at the Public Service Pension Trust Fund to see whether they are conducive to corruption or illicit enrichment. So that will be done by another department, that is the Corruption Prevention Department, which actually has got a unit which do systems reviews. Thank you so much.
Honorable Chair, you asked a question on the 128 billion.
Controlling officer, in fact, when you're looking at, let me take that one. When you're looking at all the valuation reports, this one is almost 2.5 times. Does that alarm you, controlling officer? Was that not enough to institute an investigation on the one which was about 2-3 times more than the usual or the list of the valuation? And in fact, this one, which was 127, was a desk survey report. It was done within 10 days, and it was almost 2.5 times that. Having listened to the deliberations or seen what is flying in the social media, does this alarm you? Is this not enough for you to start a proper investigation into this one, and at the same time stop the process that the process of the purchase? So you can take that one and the one from Chikwawa West.
Thank you, Chair. Actually, my colleague was addressing the question from Chikwawa West.
Yes, Chair, mine has been responded, but maybe he just forgot to add on the last part where I said maybe you could have extended it. What made you not to extend it according to your mandate? That one, I think you did not respond.
Controlling officer, I'll take that one and the one I have asked.
Chair, let me take yours and my colleagues, since he was answering the question from Honorable Member from Chikwawa West, is going to add on that aspect. Chair, the figure of 128 billion was a concern, and that was a finding in our investigations. Those are one of the three issues that we raised in our referral to the Attorney General and in the letter to the fund itself. But I'm looking at corruption investigations where I am with my officers. I don't have capacity, I don't have competence to investigate investment decisions. So I can look at the figure, 128 billion. I can't just say because the figure has increased from 47 billion to 128 billion, then there is corruption. It can't be like that. There are other factors that have to be considered. Because the 47 billion you are referring to, Chair, Honorable Chair.
Controlling officer, there's a point of order from Luntha Chichiri Misesa.
Thank you very much, Chair. The controlling officer, in answering your question, is just looking at the 128 billion as just an amount. What we are worried with, what we are talking about here, is the origination of the 128 billion. That valuer, AMJ, is not certified. And that amount has been originated from a valuer who is not certified. That's where now we are saying, isn't it that an act that has raised a flag and needs your investigation? The EMJ was here, and during our interaction and through some questions, he admitted that he is not certified. That's why we are saying the valuer is not qualified, is not certified, and the amount of money of 120 billion has come from him to advise the pension fund to go ahead with the sale. Isn't that a corrupt practice? The valuation was done within 10 days. The potential valuers took some time to come up with the valuations. But this valuer, it only took 10 days to come up with 2 days or thereabout. And there was also some issues of conniving with the procurement officer, whereby they were exchanging some phone calls with the procurement officer from pension fund. So as a committee, we are worried that this can be an act of corruption. So you, as the head, can't you see an element from this point of view? Thank you.
Controlling officer, you can take that one.
All right.
Because it's just an extension to what I had asked. So in your response, as someone who has been mandated to take charge of all anti-corruption activities and to eliminate them, get to understand as well that we're talking of procurement, which happened within 10 days, signing of terms of reference within the same 10 days, and the production of a report within the same days, and guiding the pension fund within the same days, and within same 10 days, a sale agreement of 128 billion was arrived at, basing on this dubious or questionable value. So as you respond, you may wish to take those over to you, controlling officer.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you very much, Honourable Member for Luntha Chiri. First of all, as I said, from our investigations and from our letter to the Attorney General and the letter to the fund, we indicated that the escalation of the price was a concern. And we asked that these issues should be addressed. There is a reason why eventually I did not issue a consent to deal. The reason was we never heard back from the fund if they had addressed these concerns. We now heard later, a month or two, that the fund had proceeded to purchase the AMARYLLIS. At that point in time, it's when it becomes a red flag to say, why did they not come back to say, we have addressed the issues that you have raised? So that's when we're starting issues of motive. So if we are to investigate, we'll start from the motive. Why don't you go back to the SCB to address the concern of the price, among others? But we were not able to proceed with that because we had anticipated these proceedings, which are going to come out with more revelations. So generally, in terms of going forward, we would have to wait for these proceedings because they are going to come up with more revelations on top of those we already noted, especially by the decision of the fund to proceed to buy at 128 billion without reverting back to ACB if they had addressed their concerns. Now on EMJ, we got that information, Honourable Member, for Luntha Chiri. We got that information yesterday. There is an issue of doing valuation without being registered. Now, that is an issue on its own. ACB, under the Corrupt Practices Act, we are empowered when we are doing corruption investigation and we have found that another offense has been committed, we are mandated to also investigate that offense. Now, EMJ, before we even talk about alleged corruption, seems to have committed an offense of producing a valuation without being licensed. We are going to follow that up. And further to that, because these are the issues that have arisen yesterday, we are going to follow up on the motivation, on the inducements, on the advantages that might have induced EMJ to produce a favorable report when it was not competent to do so. Thank you very much, Chair.
I see Zomba Sondole. There's Zomba City North. Palombe Machemba. Lilongwe Chirobwe, in that order, please. Then we'll go for another round.
Thank you, Chair, for giving Zomba Sondole a chance. My question lies on the lack of due diligence, lack of independent due diligence as one of the allegations from Law Society. The controlling officer said that after their investigation, they found out that there was a due diligence because those valuers were able to come up with the recommendations and risks. One of those valuers being AMARYLLIS, which was the film without a license. Now, my question is, of course, by then they said that they did not know that this film is not licensed. My question now is, having known that that film is not licensed, do the controlling officers still stand that they can tell this committee that there was indeed a due diligence, having known that the film they are relying their information is not licensed? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much, Sondole. Palombe Machemba.
Thank you, Chair, for the opportunity to ask question. The Acting Director General of the ACB. Bwana Director General, Acting Director General, before you became the ACB Director, did you at any point work for any institution or transacted any business on behalf of the owners of AMARYLLIS Hotel? And if the answer is yes, did you at any point recuse yourself from the decisions relating to the investigation of the AMARYLLIS cell? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much. Palombe Machemba, Lilongwe Chirobwe.
Thank you, Chair. Through you, I would like to ask the controlling officer, was he satisfied with the transaction price reflected from the market value? The second one is, what prompted the ACB issue a restriction notice? What were the specific risks that prompted the institution to issue one? The other one is, if ACB does not analyze investment, does not assess the price, and does not evaluate quality of due diligence, what exactly did the ACB examine before concluding that there was no evidence of corruption in this transaction? Thank you.
Controlling officer, you may take those three, then we'll go round again.
Thank you, Chair. I'll start by answering a question from Honorable Member from Zomba Sondole. Your question was, in view of the revelations from EMJ, would we still conclude that there was due diligence? To answer that straight away, in view of the revelations of EMJ, we cannot conclude that there was proper due diligence. This, however, is based on the information that we got to know about yesterday. However, at the time we were investigating, remember, the complaint from Malawi Law Society was that there was no due diligence on the transaction. And there, even if we take EMJ, we should put it aside. There were valuation by FDH and the Continental Asset Management. These indicated that the business was viable. The one of Continental Asset Management indicated that the business was viable. The one from FDH said the business was not very profitable, but it didn't rule out that it wasn't outright profitable. So our investigations found that by the time the board members of the fund made a decision to proceed with the purchase, they had all the information they needed to make a decision, both negative information and positive information. So a due diligence in that respect was done, as opposed to the allegation that came that there was completely no due diligence. So that was the perspective that we were looking at in addressing the allegation. Honorable member from Palombe Machemba, thank you for your question. I have never at any point in time been a lawyer for AMARYLLIS Hotel in this transaction. Thank you.
Controlling officer, there's a supplementary from Palombe Machemba.
Thank you, Chair. Not the acting deputy director, SEB, not in this particular transaction, but any other transaction. Have you ever worked on behalf of the owners of the AMARYLLIS Hotel? Thank you, Chair.
Controlling officer. Controlling officer. Kindly switch off the mic, please. The honourable member is asking you, as the acting Anti-Corruption Bureau, that in your career as a lawyer, have you at any point worked for the owners of AMARYLLIS Hotel? Because this issue, controlling officer, was also raised yesterday by the Malawi Law Society. And I had to ask them to wait because you were not in this room. Because as Parliament, we cannot be discussing issues of people who are not available, people who can't defend themselves. So the honourable member is riding on what happened yesterday, asking you to confirm or not to. Thank you, controlling officer. You may take that question from Palombe Machemba.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, honourable member from Palombe Machemba. My response remains in the negative. I have never at any point in time been retained to work as a lawyer for AMARYLLIS Hotel. Thank you.
So you can confirm. Palombe Machemba. The issue is about the owner of AMARYLLIS Hotel, not specific only AMARYLLIS Hotel deal at any point. That's maybe the question. Yes. At any point, have you interacted with the owner of AMARYLLIS Hotel at any of his business interactions or business undertakings? Is that the question? Maybe I give you space to phrase it in your own ways. Palombe Machemba.
Thank you, Chair. It's the same question. What I'm asking, what the people of Palombe Machemba asking the Acting Director General is whether at any point before you became the Acting Director General, you did work for or on behalf of Yusuf Investment Limited. Thank you, Chair.
A controlling officer, over to you.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Honorable Member, for Palombe Machemba. Never at any point in time have I worked for Yusuf Investments Limited. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Controlling officer, you may proceed to take a question from Lilongwe Chirobwe.
Honorable Member for Lilongwe Chirobwe, I will ask my colleague to respond to the question. Thank you.
Through Chair, Honorable Member of Lilongwe Chirobwe, I should state that when we were investigating this matter, as I already indicated, we are specifically addressing the allegations that were raised in the press statement of the Malawi Law Society. That one was that there was a lack of due diligence. But we found that there were other professionals which were involved. For example, the FDH that has been mentioned, also have some other institutions like Knight Frank, which was at one point hired to do to assess the market value of the property. There were other institutions like Garden City Properties. They also were engaged in coming up with the market value of the property. There were also other institutions like Continental Asset Management doing that due diligence. So basically, our investigations was to check, okay, they are saying there was no due diligence. Is this allegation true? If it's true, then why did they proceed with the transaction without due diligence? So with all these reports that we discovered during investigations that they were produced, some of them by professionals, except this one that we learned yesterday that they were not registered. The mere fact that we had information from most of the professional institutions conducting due diligence, I think it made our scope not to focus much on as to whether is it true each one of them is really competent to do that, how were they engaged, what time frame were they given to do the work. So the moment we thought that there are all these people, many professionals involved, I think it was like we thought the allegation has been addressed. But with these many revelations coming out, definitely we need to dig deeper as to the level of the competence of these people who were hired and how they were hired. Thank you so much.
He was taking the one from Lilongwe Chirobwe. So the owner of the question, are you not satisfied?
Yes.
Kindly take to the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I'm still having problems just the way how he has answered me, because I'm not really satisfied that the whole Competent Anti-Corruption Bureau can do its work in such a manner. That's really, what can I say? I don't know which adjective I can use to this. You mean you didn't do your thorough work before coming up with such a conclusion in a serious matter like this? Well, still, earlier this morning, we had an interaction with NICO where they even gave a recommendation to the fund that they should not go on to purchase the AMARYLLIS hotel because there was no expert advice from the hospitality advisor. I don't know how the SB overlooked this, such important advice, because they were told not to go ahead because there was no such, and up to now they don't have any of that in the office. How did they conclude that this was actually okay to go on when they knew that there was no any hospitality expert advice on them? There was no such a thing. And to say that they just did it because they thought they have tackled the issue when in fact they didn't tackle it is really unfortunate. Thank you.
Thank you, Lilongwe Chirobwe. Controlling officer.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member for Lilongwe Chirobwe, for your question and the supplementary question. In my presentation, I did allude to the mandate that we have as ACB. The mandate is to investigate corrupt practices and offenses under the Corrupt Practices Act. That's the mandate and the competence that we have. And I did say that based on the evidence at that particular time, because at that particular time, the sale had not yet been concluded. So at that particular time, we did not have evidence that money had exchanged hands or that there were promises to exchange money or to exchange advantages. However, the very same issues, Honorable Member, that you have raised by Continental were also raised by the SCB. I did allude that the SCB's investigations were the first one, official investigation, to raise the issue of the increased price as a concern, to raise the issue of risks associated with the purchase, the issue you were raising, yeah? To raise the issue of proceeding without fund managers. But when you look at these issues, they are outside my mandate at ACB. That is why I referred them to the relevant authority for this to be considered before proceeding with the transaction. What we were expecting as a bureau was a report, both from the fund and the competent authority we sent. As a bureau, the issues that you have raised, we have tackled them in this. This is a report that says this and that. That is why, as a bureau, even as today, we never issued a consent to deal authorizing them to proceed with the transaction. So, in fact, for the bureau to learn, I did say to learn that the fund had proceeded to buy the hotel without addressing these issues was a concern. And that was an issue that as a bureau, we were starting to take head on until we heard of these proceedings. And for now, we cannot proceed with that until these proceedings are concluded, and we will take those issues head on together with the recommendations that are going to come from this meeting. Thank you, Chair.
I see a hand from Luntha Chirobwe. Sorry, Chirobwe was his former constituency. My apologies. Luntha Chiromoni Nancholi Kabula.
Chair.
We have a sworn statement here submitted to the public accounts by Isaac Nkoma. When you go to page 13, number 74, it says in November 2025, EMJ Advisory Public Account submitted an investment analysis report to the trustees of Public Service Pension Trust Fund. The analysis of the report in general showed that the investment in the hotel was viable. On the 17th of November, same month, in your own statement, you are saying that there was YIL AMARYLLIS Limited and trustees of the time, being the Public Service Pension Trust Fund, signed the subscription and the sales agreement at the consideration of 128,750,000. And then you have included that particular sale agreement in this. Now, why we as Malawians are very worried with what you have just presented is the fact that you kept mentioning that the high price alone may not be evidence of corruption. And how about the speed of the transaction? To say EMJ is engaged in November, which is in your sworn statement, Isaac Nkoma. In the same sworn statement, you are aware that the sale actually happened on the 17th of November. Basically 6 days. Isn't this a clear red flag for you as a person who was doing this investigation? Wasn't this a clear red flag? Secondly, it seems that you are getting information from us when you did the investigation, when we were supposed to get this information from you. Are you aware that the legal advisor of OPC who pushed for the dissolution of the board, which was selected and trained by Reserve Bank of Malawi, eventually became the board chair who approved the purchase of the hotel? And if so, isn't this a red flag? Thirdly, you said, and this is a very worrying statement, you said that you do issue advisory recommendations, and mostly they are ignored by the institutions. Then what is your work really? If you do this kind of, it's like I have a police dog. We grew up knowing police dogs. I have a German Shepherd at home who can't actually bite. Then it means I'm not safe. That's why you see the outcry out there is, this is the work that ACB was supposed to do. So Isaac, in your submission, everything is in here. But the sentiments that keep coming out are like, no. And especially the key thing is, Nico Asset Managers refused or withdrew at 47 billion a year prior, and later on the value of 128 billion should really raise the alarm. Did you at any point thought it was wise to invite Nico Asset Managers and ask them as to why they didn't proceed with the sale, or they advised the fund otherwise, so that you should now have an opinion as to whether the 100, because this is where you can now base your argument to say there was an element of corruption or there wasn't. Because I don't know if you did that. Maybe, Chair, I can ask follow-up questions when they respond to that. Thank you.
Controlling Officer, can you take those?
Chair, thank you very much, and thank you, Honorable Member from Luntha Chiromon Nanchori. The questions will be addressed by Mr. Isaac Nkoma. Thank you.
Through Chair, thank you so much. There are, I think, three main issues that have been raised. The first one is about the EMJ's report being submitted very close to the dates in which the agreement or the sale purchase was signed. The other one was that the chair of the board, the current one, the same legal officer was more like pushing that the old board should be resolved, and now is the chair of the committee, and with his coming, the agreement is being signed. The other issue is during our investigations, did we interact with the officers of NICO Asset Management and appreciate why they withdrew from the transactions? I'll start with the EMG recommendation. Looking at the close dates in which these people were engaged, the report that they produced, and also being very close to the dates in which the agreement was signed, raised a serious concern. However, on its own, bearing in mind that there were also some other institutions that did analyze the business analysis and the structural integrity reports, and all of them actually pointed out at operational risks and not necessarily issues to do with the corruption. At that time, we recommended that the price which has been recommended by AMG, it's too high and it has to be investigated by maybe other law enforcement agencies or the registrar of financial institutions. That's why we made a recommendation that this should be referred. If there are issues that may point that there is criminality and it's to do with the corruption, then the investigation may be reopened. Mind you, we are looking at proving beyond reasonable doubt when we are dealing with the criminal matters. So by just a report being close to signing of the contract without any other evidence as to whether there were some other wrongdoings, then that alone couldn't conclude that there is corruption and we stop the transaction. On the NICO issue, we interviewed the officers of NICO Asset Management. They told us that indeed they were engaged, and at one point they were even instructed by the pension fund to make an offer that the pension fund would buy the hotel at 48.7, and they went to the extent of engaging a lawyer to proceed to draft the agreement. But they withdrew after observing that there were operational risks. And when we interviewed further, what they mentioned was that at that particular time, pension fund had not identified an expert or someone in the hotel management who could take over at the moment that the hotel is purchased to run the hotel. The other thing is that pension fund and also the owners of the AMARYLLIS hotel were not coming out clear on how they are going to carve out the AMARYLLIS hotel from Yusuf Investments so that the new buyer can take over the business without cutting over the loans. So to us, these were operational risks, and they advised pension fund wanted to proceed with the transaction, and they made a decision to pull out. That's why the legal officers told us. So from that information, unfortunately, we did not find enough evidence to say that corruption was committed or corrupt practices were done in this transaction. Thank you.
Chair.
Controlling officer, there's a note from Luntha Chilomoni.
Mr. Nkoma, are you sure you are really telling this committee that you saw no red flags on the jump from 47 billion, which was declined by Nico Asset Managers, to 128 billion 12 months later?
Mr. Nkoma, take that one.
Thank you so much, Chair. I mentioned that it was a serious concern, and that's why we made a recommendation that the financial institution or the registrar should take up the issue, because we are not finding elements, all the elements that we can prove that there was corrupt practices. But these were red flags, and that's why we raised to relevant authorities to investigate that matter.
Chair, if I may,
Maybe before controlling officer, you want other relevant authorities to investigate that matter. Where is your relevance as SB?
Thank you very much, Chair. At this juncture, as I already said, we noted three. First of all, maybe if I were to put this into context, Malawi Law Society had asked the Attorney General to investigate the matter. And at the point of investigating the matter, it was a referral from the Office of the Attorney General. When we investigated the matter and finalized, there were elements of corruption or abuse of office which are within our mandate. But there were these other issues which have nothing to do with corruption per se or abuse of office, but had to do with investment and the prudential decisions. Now, because these were within our mandate and competence, it is when we referred the issues to the relevant authority or relevant authorities, yeah, to investigate them. Not that SCB could not investigate them, but as I said, we don't work in abstract. Most of the times, we have been able to turn complaints back from several entities to say, as SCB, we cannot investigate this before or without a forensic audit report. Can you go back and do a forensic audit report? Because the forensic audit report contains technical issues which those technical people are able to probe, and we start from there. Now, the reason we referred these issues to technical people was for them to come up with conclusive findings to say, there is no way you can buy AMARYLLIS Hotel at 128 billion in 2025. That as SCB, we don't have capacity because my investigators don't have capacity in those issues. But if the relevant authorities come with that, as SCB, I'll start from there now. So that's where, not that we couldn't investigate, but we need to have a springboard for the investigations because there are technical issues that have to be investigated by the people who know them and then refer to us for us to proceed from there. That is why we noted the risks and referred to the technical people to investigate. We were expecting that they would come back to us. That is why we did not issue a consent to deal. And probably now what we should be thinking about is what motivated the fund to proceed with the purchase without addressing these issues. There, the elements of corruption, the elements of motive, the elements of inducement can be traced. So probably the investigation at this level, we are too early for SCB because we did not have the benefit of forensic report. That's why I suggested, let's have a forensic report. Let's have reports on conclusive reports from technical people on investments. Then as SCB, we build from there because we don't work on abstract, as in abstract. Thank you.
There's Luntha and Ancholi. I see Luntha Central. There's the hand next to Samulanje West. We go in that order. But as they're asking questions, controlling officer, you may also consider to tell this committee why, looking at the speed at which the transaction was happening, you escalated to relevant institutions without assigning each other clear timelines, because the speed at which the transactions were happening were alarming. Did you give timelines to those you felt would help you as SCB? That please, can you, by such a time, give us with information, looking at the speed at which people were set to execute this? Luntha Chiromoni?
Looking at the
Luntha Chiromoni, only the OPC person who ended up at the pension fund, you did not take that one because he moved from OPC and ended up being a chair on the other end. That one you didn't. So before we proceed, can you take that one?
Through Mr. Nkoma is going to take that question. Thank you.
Please, Mr. Nkoma, proceed.
Thank you so much, Chair. At the time when we were investigating this matter, as I mentioned, basically we are looking at the press statement from AMARYLLIS Society. So we didn't know that we also have to find out how the body was constituted, who is there, how did you come into the body. Honestly, we do not do that angle, and I didn't know that the chair is coming from OPC, and he had some transaction or some issues before joining the board of trustees of pension fund. Thank you.
Luntha Chiromoni.
Chair, I think in all honesty, the principal investigation officer dropped the ball. Whether he did that deliberate or otherwise, it's something that this committee must investigate. Their entire budget as the ACB is something between 4 billion to 5 billion. Any figure or jump or difference from 47 billion to 128 billion should shock any investigation or any investigator in the ACB, if ACB really has investigators. Otherwise, we are going round and round. What we expected you was at that point, since you had first issued a restriction notice, maybe you could have extended, because you had a chance to extend the restriction notice. Secondly, if you saw that the figure was higher, because the difference from 47 billion, which was denied, to 128 billion, can actually run your institution for over 20 years. That's how big, because we have to understand what is the value of 128 billion. What is the value in the difference between 47 billion and 128 billion? We are talking about 128 billion as if we are talking about 120,000. How, in our budget, we